Hello everybody, and welcome back to Steven's Fight Show. Alright, so UFC 281 is happening very soon. And yes, we have a stacked main card for UFC 281. We have Dan Hooker, we have Frankie Edgar for his last fight, we have Carla Esparza versus Zhang Wei Li for the strawweight title, Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler, and obviously Israel Adesanya against Alex Pereira. But specifically for this video, we're going to be talking about the battle between the Diamond versus the Iron. That sounded like a Minecraft video or something. I don't know how I even came up with that. But anyways, if you haven't guessed, in this video we're going to be talking about Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. Now, I am super excited for this fight. Besides the main event, obviously, I am very excited for this fight personally. This fight is going to be absolutely fireworks, and I know so many people out there, including myself, are so excited to see this fight. This will be such a fun fight to watch, so let's discuss all the great things that are happening within this fight. So, Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. This is the fight that's going to steal the show in my opinion. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler will be an exciting fight, and it could have potential to go down as fight of the year. We have two guys who aren't afraid to bring the fight to each other, and they don't mind staying in the pocket and trading if they have to do that to win. I mean, essentially both guys are bad dudes in the UFC. They're willing to bring it no matter what. I mean, talk about a great matchup to create such an electrifying fight. In Madison Square Garden too, that's what's crazy. And for this fight specifically, I think it's very important for both guys to win this fight, because whoever loses this fight could potentially be on the decline of their career. And before everybody comes at me saying, oh, that's not true, let me explain my reasoning on why I think that is. Okay, so let's talk about Dustin Poirier first. Poirier has had two big back-to-back wins against Conor Mcgregor, which was the pinnacle of his career. But unfortunately, he fought for the title against Charles Oliveira, in which he came up short. And since Poirier's loss against Charles Oliveira, many people seem to forget how good Poirier actually is. Yes, he lost to Charles Oliveira, but considering what Charles has done to every other lightweight in the division, it's not so surprising. And the thing is, if we look at Dustin Poirier's resume and the guys that he's faced, he's beaten some top level contenders in this division for the last 5 or so years. Guys like Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis, Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker, and Conor McGregor. These are guys that were once or still killers in the division. The performances that Poirier has put up in these fights shows where his level is at among other fighters in this division. And he's proven time and time again why he belongs at the top. His only losses out of his last 8, 9, or 10 fights are against guys like Khabib and Charles Oliveira. And there's no shame in losing against those guys at all. Charles Oliveira, we don't need to be reminded of what he's done in the last 2 or 3 years. At one point, Charles Oliveira had a legitimate chance of becoming the lightweight GOAT. And on the other hand, Poirier lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is the lightweight GOAT. He is the most dominant fighter in UFC history, and no one has ever beaten him. So there's no shame in losing against the greatest. However, going back to what I said earlier, whoever loses this fight could be on the decline of their career. The reason why that's a possibility for Poirier is because after the trilogy fight against Conor McGregor, Poirier did express his interest in potentially retiring from MMA because the love for fighting isn't there for him anymore. And that's the issue with all of this. Fans speculate that Dustin Poirier is still only competing for money fights because he's been competing in the UFC for a very long time, he hasn't become champion yet, and his love for this game isn't the same anymore. And if he was to lose this fight, there's a chance that his motivation to continue to fight could slowly diminish and he could just hang it up altogether. Alright, so now let's switch over to Michael Chandler and let's talk about why Michael Chandler could be on the decline as well if he loses this fight. Michael Chandler, he's had one of the most exciting starts to the UFC in a while. There's a reason why fans consider this man to be the most entertaining lightweight in the world. When you watch Michael Chandler fight, he'll always guarantee you that he'll come to fight no matter what. And if you watch his fights, he usually keeps his promise. When he first came into the UFC, the way he finished Dan Hooker when Dan Hooker was at his best was sensational. And the way he dominated in the first round against Charles Oliveira was also impressive. He was able to hurt Charles Oliveira in that fight many times, and I think that round was scored a 10-8 in the fight. And obviously the Justin Gaethje fight was a fan favorite, and you don't need to become an MMA expert to understand why. That fight between him and Justin Gaethje was fight of the year, and if you watch that fight, I don't think you can didn't even take a moment to sit down during that entire fight. And his last fight against Tony Ferguson, where he finished him with a front kick to the jaw, was absolutely brutal. Man, that was so tough to see Tony go out like that, man. But all in all, it's pretty easy to understand why fans love Michael Chandler and why he's one of the most entertaining fighters in the game today. However, there's one thing about Michael Chandler that I think goes under the radar, and it's that, like Poirier, he's also been competing for a very long time. Before entering the UFC, Chandler has competed for many different MMA organizations. And he's also stated many times that he's not here for a long time, he's only here for a good time. And it makes sense because the man is 36. He doesn't have a whole lot of time left in his career. He was champion in Bellator for a good amount of time, and he looks to become champion in the UFC as well. So there can't be too many losses or errors at this stage in his career because the window is slowly closing. And Michael Chandler, he's also been in a lot of wars or fights where they've gone back and forth, and because of that, he's taken a lot of damage throughout his entire career. And recently, there's a possibility that all of those wars that he's been a part of could have caught up to him. Although Chandler is 2-2 in the UFC, he's been dropped in 3 of those fights. Charles Oliveira dropped him with the left hook, Gaethje dropped him with an uppercut, and Tony Ferguson recently was also able to do the same, and that's concerning if he wants to become champion. So if Chandler loses this fight, things could get even worse because although he is an exceptional fighter, some things like durability do not last forever, and as you age, it doesn't make it any better as well. Alright, so now let's talk about the fight and what both fighters need to do to win this fight. Originally, this fight was supposed to be scheduled for 5 rounds, but then it switched to a 3-round fight, and that's huge for Chandler. Dustin Poirier has stated that he's looking to put Chandler away, and that if Chandler fights Poirier the same way he fought Justin Gaethje, then he'll put him away. In my opinion, I do agree with that statement. On the feet, Poirier is the much better boxer. He's considered one of the best boxers in the UFC for a reason. The way he's able to set up punches, land combinations, and change his attacks is phenomenal. His speed, power, and timing are also good as well. I mean, you have to remember, this dude is big for lightweight. I think Dustin has stated that he walks around like 180 to 190. And for him to compete at 155, that's insane. And if you combine Chandler's durability with that, it's going to be a disadvantage for Chandler, considering the fact that he's there to be hit as well. If Chandler does indeed fight the way that he did against Justin Gaethje, meaning he's walking into range, throwing bombs, trying to out-tough Poirier, then I can see Chandler being overly aggressive and getting countered on his way in. And Poirier, he doesn't really kick too often, but when he does, it's usually kicks that are highly effective, like low kicks. And I think it would serve him well if he can mix it in with his boxing. Chandler, he does have a wide stance, and at times he can be a little too heavy on that lead foot. So if Poirier can use those kicks to chop down Chandler's lead foot, then the boxing can become even easier. And for Chandler, he has said that he's not looking to win Fight of the Year this time around. He's looking to do whatever it takes to win this fight. He's not here to please the fans this time around. And I think that's the right mindset for Chandler because I think he can't be reckless in this fight against Poirier because Poirier is the sharper man. He needs to be strategic in this fight, and one of the ways he can do that is by wrestling. Michael Chandler was an NCAA wrestler back in the day, and I think he should stick to what he's good at, which is wrestling. But to add to that, what Chandler really needs to do is he needs to have a whole MMA game plan. Even though he's a wrestler, he likes to stand and bang against his opponents, and against Poirier, he might have a bit of success, but realistically, he would probably be outmatched. It will be important for Chandler to wrestle early and get Poirier up against the fence and mix in his striking to give Poirier different looks and set up attacks. And it's kind of like what Charles Oliveira was doing to Dustin Poirier. If you watch that fight between Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier, round 1, it was a crazy high-paced round, but Charles Oliveira was able to wear Dustin Poirier down by constantly being on the pressure, putting the pace on him, and when they were in close range, that's where Oliveira would thrive. He was landing knees, elbows, punches, and teeps. And that's where Michael Chandler needs to be in this fight. Because Poirier, he does have the better cardio here, and Chandler, he is known to have pacing issues deep in the fight. And if this was a 5-round fight, I think this would be a clear win for Poirier because that's where Poirier lives in the fight, which is the championship rounds. However, in a 3-round fight, this gives Chandler more opportunities to start fast and stay active. So for my official prediction, I'm going to take Poirier by a 2-1 unanimous decision. I think Poirier is going to get the better of most of these striking exchanges where he'll land big shots on Chandler, he'll chop down the lead leg, and as soon as he catches Chandler coming in, he'll push Chandler back with his volume. Chandler is probably going to engage on the feet and also land a few big shots shots of his own, but at some point, Chandler is going to start wrestling heavy and he might time a takedown on Poirier, but I believe Poirier will get back to his feet. One thing that Chandler cannot do is overthrow against Poirier, because he did do it against Tony Ferguson, and against Poirier, if he does make that mistake, he will pay for it. Poirier will probably drop Chandler once or twice throughout the entire fight, but I don't think Poirier will finish Chandler because I do expect Chandler to keep his word to go out there and do whatever it takes to win this fight, because realistically, he doesn't need to please anybody. Everyone in the world already knows that he's exciting and entertaining, so he has no reason to go out there and fight with his ego. So I think he's going to go out there and do everything tactically to win this fight. And overall, it's going to be a great fight between two killers. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say, and let me know, who do you have winning this Saturday, Poirier or Chandler? Who do you think has a better chance to become champion, Poirier or Chandler? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. That would be greatly appreciated. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace.